Hi guys, welcome to the show. My name is Seb Ostrovich, aka the Voice of the People, and this is the Weightlifting House podcast. Welcome to the second episode of the Sinclair Countdown, hosted by me, Seb Ostrovich, the Voice of the People, as I count down from numbers 57 through to and including number 52 of the greatest weightlifters ever. Next week on the show, we crack the top 50 ever, which is exciting because then we really are in and amongst the absolute goats of the sport. Now, before we start, don't forget that I recently landed a discount for you all from Virus, which is very exciting. So, for 10% off their clothing, you've just got to use the code WeightliftingHouse, one word, all lowercase, and that will give you a 10% discount, and it will also show your support to the show. Next, Weightlifting House maroon t-shirts are in, and they are a great way to represent everything about Weightlifting House, which, and I've been thinking about this for a bit, is essentially just nerding out and being dedicated to the great sport, learning the history and context of all that has gone on and all that is still going on, and being able to understand your place in the sport and having the respect to those who've paved the way for us. My life is essentially entirely weightlifting, and by no coincidence, I basically did everything I could to set it up like that. I train, I coach, I write, I podcast. It's just a weightlifting lifestyle. Oh, and one other thing that I'm really excited to talk about, my friend Dan over at Powerful Ideas Press, with whom I actually have a few exciting projects coming, is creating the first ever fantasy weightlifting, which I think is such a good idea and something I immediately jumped at the opportunity to get involved with. So, for those of you who have never played fantasy sports, you pick a team ahead of an event and then watch how your team does compared to others. This time, all you have to do is select your team from any of the entered athletes for an international weightlifting competition. You can only have one lifter per weight category, and you have a budget limit, so athletes are valued based on their rankings, basically. Apart from that, you can select any team you like. Your selected lifter will score points for your team based on where they place in the competition. The player with the highest total score wins the competition and will probably win some kind of prize, but we'll look into that, I think, when the time kind of comes. You all need to get involved with this. It's probably worth mentioning at this point that I am planning on winning. I feel like my job as hosting the news show is definitely something that will help me do well in fantasy weightlifting. So sign up and await further instructions. You can find the fantasy weightlifting at fantasy-weightlifting.com. Surprise, surprise. The first competition will be the Commonwealth Games, which starts, I believe, in 19 days from now. Okay, let's crack on with the Sinclair countdown then. As a reminder, the athletes from last week were Nikolai Pesalov, Valerius Leonidas, Pablo Lara, Andrei Rybakov, Israel Militosian, and Oleg Perepechinov, with Sinclair's climbing from 465.1 up to 469.2. It's certainly very tight at the top. Now, to start off this week's program, at number 57 we have the Chinese 85, Lu Yong. Now, Lu Yong never won a huge number of medals in international competition. In fact, if we only count Worlds and the Olympics, Lu Yong only won 2 medals. The first was at the 2005 Worlds in Doha in Qatar, where Lu Yong would meet the debut of a man we all know of today, a man named Ilya Ilyin, who competed for the first time as a 17-year-old 85. Lu Yong snatched well in that competition, as always, with 175 kilos, actually beating Ilya, who ended up with 170. Interestingly, this competition perfectly represents the phrase snatch for show, jerk for dough, as whilst Ilya came 7th in the snatch and Lu Yong came 4th, they ended up as number 1 and 2 in the total. Two of the lifters who outsnatched Lu and, of course, Ilya in this competition were two lifters who starred in last week's episode, Andrei Rybakov and Oleg Perepechinov. In the clean and jerk portion of this competition, Lu Yong climbed the ranks, lifting 200, 205 and finally 210 to put him in first place in their total. Of course, Lu Yong and his coach probably assumed that this would have been enough to win, and why not? No one had ever encountered Ilya Ilyin before. In what would become well known in weightlifting, however, is that if you leave Ilya with the final clean and jerk of the competition, even if it involves a huge jump, he's going to make it 100% of the time. Even at 17 years old, Ilya jumped to 216 to beat Lu Yong. It did, however, give Lu Yong a taste of an international medal as he walked away with the silver. Lu Yong then headed into the 2007 Worlds with the goal of finally winning a gold medal. But due to a sprain early on in the competition, he only managed to go 2 for 6, snatching 168 kilos on his first and clean and jerking a light, for him, 195 kilos on his first. Lu Yong placed 8th. So, how does a world silver medalist and an 8th place finisher go to holding the 57th highest Sinclair ever? Well, as it happens, Lu Yong competed in the 2008 Chinese Nationals and performed so well, snatching 180 kilos and clean and jerking 213 kilos, that 22-year-old Lu Yong was earmarked by head coach Pang Gaojing as an Olympic member for Beijing. Fortunately for Lu Yong, Ilya Ilyin had by that point already moved up to the 94 kilo class, and so his real competition lay with the snatch world record holder Andrei Rybakov. Both went 2 for 3 in the snatch, Lu ending with 180 kilos and Rybakov with a 5 kilo lead at 185 kilos. On the clean and jerk, Rybakov managed to squeeze out 209 kilos, a big lift for him. Lu Yong, of course, jumped up to 214 kilos to take the win. This would have given him the same total as Rybakov, but of course back in 2008 athletes could still win via a lower body weight if of course the same total was achieved. Whilst Lu managed to get 214 kilos overhead on his second, he was, justly, called for a press out. With 2 minutes on the clock, he gathered himself one last time before going out onto the Olympic platform and making the 214 kilo clean and jerk, locking it out with conviction, securing for himself the gold medal and a spot on the Sinclair countdown. Interestingly, both Lu and Andre lifted the same total in the same weight class, and both featured on the show, but Lu Yong was 3 places ahead of Rybakov. Why? Because he weighed in at less than 300 grams under Rybakov. Moving on to number 56, we have the Turkish legend, the 52, 54 and 56 kilo weightlifter Halil Mutlu. Halil is certainly one of the most decorated weightlifters of all time. His accomplishments include winning gold at 10 European Championships, 5 golds at the World Championships, 20 world records spanning his 18-year career from 1991 to 2008, and possibly most impressively, Halil is one of 4 weightlifters ever to win gold at 3 Olympic Games, which he did in Atlanta 96, Sydney 2000 and Athens 2004. Halil Mutlu still stands as one of 5 men ever to clean and jerk 3 times bodyweight. Halil's biggest total ever does not contend with his best Sinclair ever, as it was accomplished during the few years later in his career when he competed as a 62 kilo lifter. This total, as a 62 kilo lifter, was set in Vancouver in 2003 at the World Champs, where he won gold. Halil snatched 147.5 kilos and clean and jerked 175 kilos for a total of 322.5 kilos. Compared to today's world records of 154, 183 and 333 for the total, Halil is a little off, but this was a suboptimal weight class for Halil. Easily the smallest man in the 62 kilo class, if not the entire competition. He did, after all, stand at the short height of 4'11". That's 150 centimetres. Halil's best performance came 3 years prior as a 56 kilo lifter in Sydney 2000. Halil Mutlu was unbelievably dominant in this competition, with no real threat. In fact, he could have simply made his openers and still won the entire competition. Of course, going for 2 for 6 isn't the style of a man who broke 20 world records in their career. It is worth mentioning that Halil already held all 3 world records in this class. 137.5 in the snatch, 166 in the clean and jerk, and a 302.5 kilo total, all hit in Athens 99. A year later in Sydney, Halil opened the snatch at 130 kilos, then 135 kilos, and finally 138 kilos to beat his world record by half a kilo. He was, however, only credited with 137.5 kilos, half a kilo less than what he actually hit. Such were the rules with breaking world records back in the day. What that means is that Halil had lifted 138 kilos. The 138 kilos now counted as a world record, but he was only credited with 137.5, despite jumping from 135 to 138. Moving on to the clean and jerk, Halil opened with 160 kilos before jumping to a new world record, 167.5 kilos, on his second, which he smoked. He missed his third at 170. Halil walked away setting history, 2 world records, 3 Olympic records, and his second Olympic gold medal. This total of 305 kilos weighing 55.6 gave him a Sinclair of 469.4. If we count the 138 kilo snatch world record, rather than the 137.5 for which he was credited, Halil would have jumped a spot on the Sinclair list to number 55. In the following year, Halil broke both snatch and clean and jerk world records again, though not at the same meet. He snatched 138.5 and clean and jerked 168 kilos. Today's world records have not improved much. The snatch has been increased by half a kilo to 139 and by 3 kilos on the clean and jerk to 171. It is worth mentioning that in 2005, Halil Mutlu received a 2-year ban for the anabolic nandrolone. Upon returning to the international scene in 2008, Halil pulled out, commenting that he had not been able to hit his target weights in training. Moving in at number 55, we have the Bulgarian 69 and 77 kilo lifter Georgi Markov, not to be confused with other Bulgarian athletes Georgi Gardev or Ivan Markov. Georgi Gardev is one of the few athletes on this list that has made it onto the list with a total that was beaten in the same competition. This can only happen when the featured athlete is going head-to-head with one of the all-time greats. The great this time being the world record holder in the snatch, clean and jerk and total at the time, Galibin Boevski, another Bulgarian who we shall meet later on towards the end of the Sinclair Countdown series. At the start of his career, Georgi Markov competed as a 69 kilo lifter, never winning an international competition, but setting not only his best ever Sinclair, but a world record along the way, one that was not beaten until 2014 by China's Lao Hui. In 2000, Markov, competing against teammate Galibin Boevski, managed to win the snatch portion of the competition, out-snatching 2.5 kilos over Boevski, who previously held the world record at 162.5. Of course, this meant that he snatched 165 kilos. In the clean and jerk, however, Boevski was too strong, lifting 195 kilos. Markov was able to lift 187.5 kilos, which, although equal to that of 2 other lifters, was enough for the silver medal overall due to the astonishing world record snatch that he had previously achieved. His performance of 165 and 187.5 gave him a total of 352.5 and a Sinclair of 469.6. 8 years later, now as an 85 kilo lifter, Markov tested positive for a banned substance, leading to Bulgaria withdrawing their entire weightlifting team from the Olympic Games in Beijing. Quite the up-and-down career for Markov. At number 54, we have a weightlifter of whom few other weightlifters have heard. From Hungary, spanning the years 1983 to 1992, the 82.5 kilo weightlifter Laszlo Barsi. Truth be told, there's not a lot to be found about Laszlo, but there is enough to solidify his position at number 54. Over his career, Laszlo won only 1 World Championships, though medalled at several. He also never won an Olympic gold medal. He did, however, lift exceptionally well once or twice. Routinely weighing in at under 82.5 kilos bodyweight, Laszlo would snatch over 165 kilos in competition, making 167.5 and 117 the year prior to his best ever total. At the 1986 Worlds in Sofia, Bulgaria, the year before the competition that had him feature on this list, Laszlo performed exceptionally well at Worlds. He managed to snatch 175 kilos and clean and jerk 210 kilos, a weight which today would be impressive for any 85 kilo lifter, let alone an 82.5 kilo lifter. It happened, however, to have been in the same competition in which the legendary Asan Zlatev dropped his greatest performance ever, a performance which somehow dwarfed Laszlo's performance. I won't say what he hit, as we'll save that for the last 1 or 2 episodes of the series, but it is safe to say that neither Laszlo nor any other competitors stood a chance. In 1987, however, it was a different story. Despite Laszlo still going up against the great and powerful Asan Zlatev, he managed to win, out-totaling Zlatev actually by a huge 15 kilos. Laszlo managed to snatch an extraordinary 180 kilos, a weight which hasn't been hit in today's heavier 85 kilo weight class in a major competition for 9 years. He then went on to clean and jerk 210 kilos, giving him a winning total of 390 kilos and a Sinclair of 470.33. Whilst his medal collection might be on the slimmer side, than many of the other featured athletes at least, he ought to be remembered as the man who slayed the great Asan Zlatev. Now, I want to take the briefest of interludes to further explain just how prestigious this list of athletes is. I was scouring through some of the greatest lifters ever and came across the popular Zlatan Vanev. Without thinking much of it, I assumed he would feature on this podcast. After all, he's one of the famous lifters from the phenomenal documentary Unbelievable Bulgarians. As it turns out, though, Vanev does not make this list. In fact, his best Sinclair of 457, which, by the way, included a clean and jerk of 217.5 as an 85 kilo lifter, puts him further under the list than we are through the list. We are now 10 lifters deep. Should I have started this series by including the next 10 greatest weightlifters ever, still Zlatan Vanev would not have featured. Anyway, I thought that was rather incredible, just the fact that a lifter of such excellence did not even make the top 63 or even 73 weightlifters of all time. Moving on to number 53, we have Sergei Filimonov, the Russian-born Kazakhstani 76 and 77 kilo weightlifter. Winner of no World Championships and no Olympic Games, but holder of 2 world records that would take up until the emergence of the great Liu Xiaojun to be broken. It is worth mentioning that Sergei is one of only 3 Kazakh weightlifters to make this list. The other 2 I hope you already know of. One of them I'm certain that you do, the other you really ought to. Both world record holders in the clean and jerk. Of course, I am talking about Ilya Ilyin and Nijat Rahimov, lifters who will not feature for several more episodes to come. It was indeed Sergei's only ever international win, the Asian Games in 2002 in the 77 kilo class, in which he managed to set his best ever total and Sinclair. Sergei was indeed a snatch specialist and managed to set his first ever world record in the snatch at this competition with 173 kilos, a weight we rarely see in this weight class today. Other than Liu Xiaojun and Karapatian, I'm unable to think of any other 77 kilo lifter who snatched as much as this in the last decade. After his world record of 173 kilos in the snatch, Sergei went on to clean and jerk 202.5, giving him a total of 375.5 kilos and a Sinclair of 470.337, just 3,000ths of a Sinclair point above Laszlo Barsi. Sergei went on to beat his own world record 2 years later in 2004 in his home country of Kazakhstan in Almaty, a city where I shall be flying to in a week today. There he managed to snatch 173.5 kilos. In 2004 at the Olympics, Sergei was one of the favourites to win, if not the favourite. Of course, the clean and jerk world record holder Oleg Perepechinov was competing, but none of them, Sergei included, could have prepared for the newcomer. Sergei still lifted well, snatching 172.5 kilos and clean and jerking 200, but it was not enough to beat the next athlete on this list, the newcomer, the Turkish youngster, Taner Sagir. Taner Sagir, the Turkish 77, positioned at number 52 on the all-time Sinclair list, is an Andrei Romnau type figure. What I mean by this is that he very suddenly appeared on the international scene, broke several records, won gold, and then very soon after disappeared. Taner Sagir was born in Bulgaria by Turkish parents and was as such raised in Bulgaria for 4 years before emigrating to Turkey. Interestingly, Taner actually had an older brother, Nazir Sagir, who also competed in weightlifting, albeit never quite reaching the same heights as Taner. He did, however, snatch 156 kilos and clean and jerk 193 kilos as an 85 kilo lifter. Not bad numbers by any measure. Taner's first international competition was in early 2004 at the European Championships, which he won, snatching 167.5 kilos, 6 kilos under Sergei Filimonov's world record, and clean and jerk 200 kilos, 10 kilos under Oleg Perepechinov's world record. A few months later, however, at Athens, in the Olympics in 2004, Taner turned up in peak shape and, at the mere age of 19 years old, snatched an Olympic record 172.5 kilos, clean and jerked an Olympic record of 202.5 kilos, set an Olympic total record of 375 kilos, and became an Olympic champion, crushing the dreams of many ending veteran careers. This total gave Taner Sagir a Sinclair of 470.4. This is an interesting situation for the Sinclair countdown, because if you remember back to the last athlete mentioned, Sergei Filimonov, Sergei, in the same weight class as Taner Sagir, just 2 years previously, out-totaled Taner Sagir's Olympic record by a kilo. But because Taner Sagir weighed 76.1 instead of Sergei's 76.5, just 400 grams lighter, Taner comes out with the better placement despite a worse total. So who is the better weightlifter? I'm inclined still to go with Taner Sagir, despite his slightly lower total. There are several ways to define the greatest ever. Total, Sinclair, international golds, Olympic golds. Despite this series being all about the Sinclair, I do not necessarily believe that the Sinclair is the greatest marker of a weightlifter's prowess. However, it certainly is about as good a predictor as you're going to be able to find. Instead, however, I believe that world and Olympic gold medals are most important. Eras change, and as such, standards change. Athletes are pushed more or less due to the competency of their rivals. Drug regimes and strategies change too. It is no surprise in this vein that the greatest lifters of all time came from the 1980s. And so, I think that because of Taner Sagir's Olympic gold medal and his World Championship gold medal, he does deserve his spot one above Sergei Filimonov, who never won a gold medal at the Olympics. And with that, I conclude episode 2 of the Weightlifting House Sinclair Countdown. To give a quick rundown of those mentioned, this episode included Liu Yong, Halil Mutlu, Georgi Markov, Laszlo Barsi, Sergei Filimonov, and Taner Sagir, with Sinclairs ranging from 469.3 to 470.4, barely a single Sinclair point between them. Now, before I leave, remember that if you shop at Virus International and want to support the podcast and the many hours of work it takes to create a show like this, then please do use the discount code WeightliftingHouse, all one word, all lowercase, to get 10% off your order. Also, don't forget to pick up your Weightlifting House t-shirts at weightliftinghouse.com. Lastly, please do subscribe to the show and leave a rating and a review on iTunes. I'm going to mention this properly in an episode to come, I'd imagine, but I'm going to send out either a Weightlifting House t-shirt or a YB Normal t-shirt to the best review on iTunes, so feel free to get on that now. It makes me very, very happy to see reviews. Also, there are very few comments on there at all, so winning the t-shirt will certainly not be the most difficult thing in the world. Guys, thanks once again for tuning in. I certainly hope that you've learned a huge amount about the sport of weightlifting, the sport that we all love so much, the most raw form of human competition and self-betterment, perhaps. I've had a great time and will catch up with you all on Monday.